Хочешь посмотреть эксклюзивный и очень горячий контент 18+ по Наруто? Тогда заходи на мой Бусти. Ссылка в описании, и приятного просмотра хента.
I seem to be dead, but also not. My head is a mess. Pictures of different things are jumping before my eyes: people, nature, cities. Big cities that for some reason seem alien, although I know that I live there. Or maybe not? Trees, the tall trunks of which even 3 people cannot embrace. And also blood, knives, and dead people. This causes fear, and somewhere deep inside there is a keen understanding that some died at my hands. Horror took over my consciousness, the pictures began to flicker faster, my temples throbbed, my head was splitting. For the first time I clearly felt my body. Unable to bear the pulsating pain, I screamed and heard sounds, although there were none before. Aizu. Una. Izuna, the voice was heard as if through the thickness of the water. Nissan? A barely audible question escaped from my lips. There was a clear feeling that this was my brother, he would help, but inside there was a scratching feeling: I don't have a brother. The buzzing in my head grew, it throbbed. I couldn't open my eyes, it was as if sand had been poured into them along with hot oil. I whined from the sharp pain in my eyes. Do something. An angry roar made me freeze. It became deafeningly quiet, but, unable to bear it, I screamed again. When you scream, it doesn't seem to hurt so much. Calm down, the voice was piercingly cold and calm. My body somehow shrank, and I bit my lip. But she's in pain, the new brother objected. I snorted hysterically at the thought. Something cold fell on my head, and the pain began to subside. I barely managed to open my eyes. Everything was blurry, but I managed to see the face of a black-haired man above me. Oto-san. Father, then. With these thoughts, I lost consciousness. The next awakening was more pleasant. My body ached a little, and my head was heavy, but that pain was gone. And my consciousness was clear this time. Madara was my older brother, Taijima Uchiha was my father, I had no other close relatives, 2 brothers died, my mother too. My only friend was killed yesterday. I shook, everything suddenly became clear. Damn Inuzuka, the next time we meet I will destroy them. I heard quick steps, the door opened with a bang. Madara was standing in front of me. Pictures danced before my eyes. I jerked my head, not now. Amato, how are you? My brother was already squatting and looking at me with concern. It's fine, the voice is muffled. It's probably from all the screaming. Izuna, turn off the Sharingan, she blinked in confusion at his request. When did she manage to do that? She cut off the current and turned off the jutsu. Do you remember what happened? A nod was his answer. Such things are not forgotten. Madara frowned. You awakened the Manjikyu, so that's why I felt so bad. She nodded again. Everything is fine, Madara, the smile came out tired. Leaning forward, I hugged him. They squeezed me very tightly. Everything is fine, the main thing is that Madara is near. How long we sat like that, I don't know. I came to when I felt a gaze on me. I looked up and saw my father. Hello, Oto-san, I slightly moved away from Nissan and bowed to my father, as much as I could in this position. In response, they nodded and glanced at me. I see you're fine, the man stated the fact. It wasn't a question, but I nodded. I'll give you a week to rest, he said and left. Madara, who had managed to turn around, looked menacingly at the man leaving. He began to mumble something unintelligible and hugged me again as if he wanted to squeeze me into himself. I began to stroke his long, sticking out hair. Nissan, let's go for a walk. I said, leaning towards his ear. That way he would definitely hear me. He muttered something inaudibly, stood up and nodded. We got up and left the house. The Uchiha settlement was quite large, and the clan leader's house was in the middle, and my father was the leader. His house was the largest and most protected, and in case of an attack, incapacitated clan members hid in it. Walking along the streets, we headed to one of our favorite training grounds. We walked slowly, each thinking about his own. I was worried about those strange pictures. Big buildings, a lot of things I definitely shouldn't know. And strange feelings that sometimes arise. What's especially alarming is that I saw this world as a fictional story. I won't lie, I didn't like what I saw. And the whole problem is my death and that black thing, Zetsu, I think. I was confident in this knowledge. Even if there is a possibility of such a development of the plot, and there is, I can't allow my death. And the only way out is an alliance with Senju. I won't let Tobirama destroy his clan. RRR, inhale, exhale, calm, only calm. The very idea of an alliance with Senju irritates and angers. This thought is kept afloat only by the understanding that this is my brother's dream and that there is no other way to save Madara. Tobirama, as disgusting as it is to admit it, may become stronger than me in the future. The Uzumaki clan will not refuse to help him, no matter how you look at it, but these two clans are related. And they have an agreement. Only the Uzumaki don't interfere in our war, we also sometimes buy seals from them. Ordinary, of course, but the Uzumaki are definitely not our enemies. I even respect them. I was distracted from my thoughts by the fact that we had reached our destination. I approached the tree and plopped down on the grass. Madara did not do as I did, but simply sprawled out on it. We sat in silence for a while. I looked at the bird that sat on the tree and sang beautifully. The wind rustled in the trees. It was so nice. Madara, she said quietly, but enough for him to hear. There's no one nearby, I'm still a pretty good sensor. The guy mumbled without opening his eyes. He's 19 now, I think, and I'm 15. There's time. Do you still want an alliance with Senju? I watched Nissan closely. He tensed up and, raising himself up on his elbows, looked into my eyes. I don't know what he was trying to find there, but after thinking for a moment, he answered. I don't know why you're asking, but probably not. The answer was unconvincing. A raised eyebrow and distrust greeted Madara. The Uchiha's gaze became heavy. He stared at me for about 5 minutes, but he exhaled heavily and closed his eyes. He was in no hurry to answer. Has your dream changed, Oniai-san? My brother shuddered and opened his eyes sharply, looking at me with suspicion and confusion. He was about to say something, but quickly closed his mouth. I looked at Nissan expectantly. At some point, his gaze changed. Now he looked at me so pleadingly that it was very difficult not to give in. Frowning, I began to drill him with my gaze. I don't know, Madara finally answered, hesitating. Nissan, I will always be on your side, no matter what you choose. Having said this, I slowly get up and leave the training ground, noticing out of the corner of my eye how he nods. My words were accepted, and he understood everything. Why did I start a conversation and what did I want? I will hope that he will make the right decision, and I will always be his shadow. All my feelings agreed with this. Let's play? A grin played on my face by itself. Commentary on Part 1. Beginning. Bacino. The week passed quickly. All this time I was practicing all the techniques. Once I even had a sparring match with my brother, in which I lost, but we destroyed half the training ground. It was fun. We also went hunting, and not just any kind of hunting, but with falcons, during which Madara almost fell off a cliff. We brought our prey safe and sound, almost, not to mention the half hour during which Madara tried to get a hare carcass out of a crack between the rocks. With an indifferent look, I suggested blowing it out of there with the futon technique, but my option was rejected. Snorting, I watched my brother's tricks. He pulled it out, scratching his hand in the process and, in his emotions, roasting the carcass to coals. With an angry hiss, he headed for the village. Without saying anything, I followed him. Why anger Nissan, who was already at the end of his rope? That's what I think, it's not worth it. Now I am sitting under a tree and meditating. This method helps to collect thoughts and feelings. There is less contradiction. Although I can definitely say that something has changed in me too. Not much, and it is not yet clear what, but definitely, something has changed. I heard a rustle, and something fell on my knees. Opening my eyes, I came across the black eyes of a raven. Garo? Izuna-san, Taijima-sama is looking for you. Ka. At the end of the story, the raven flew up with a loud cawing, circled and landed on my shoulder. Standing up, I took a piece of dried meat from my pocket and handed it to the raven. He nodded gratefully. Having quickly reached the house, I headed to Tosan's office. Having knocked on the door, I heard permission to enter. As usual, he was sitting at the table, sorting through papers. As soon as I approached the table, he turned his attention to me. "Izuna, I have a task for you," he said, handing me a few papers. I quickly glanced at the text and nodded. "Your task is to sneak in there and return Yasa to the clan. Any questions?" Taijima looked at me expectantly. "Can I use camouflage?" I was given the go-ahead and left. That meant I had to pack for a 2-week mission by tomorrow. The bird was still sitting on my shoulder. "Goro, are you going to Madara?" The raven nodded and, having listened to my message, flew away. Having collected the necessary things in the room, I went to Aki-kun. He has a lot of things for transformation without henge. I found him quite easily. Aki-kun, he has black hair with a dusty tint. He smiles quite a bit and likes to chat, 17 years old. Not very strong, but a master of disguise. Equipment for missions with a fake identity or where you shouldn't be recognized, they took everything from him. Hair dye, false hair, powder, mascara, clothes. Izuna-sama, the guy I called, turned to me and broke into a smile. "Aki-kun, I have a mission. Can I borrow your camouflage kit?" He nodded, looking serious for a second, and then broke into a happy smile again. "Of course, let's go." He waved at me and headed towards his home. We walked in silence, although it was clear that Aki really wanted to talk. We got there quickly. He asked who I should become and pulled out a sealing scroll. "Here, this should do." The guy handed it to me. I took it and thanked the owner, and headed back to my room across the rooftops. Madara was already waiting for me in the room. I nodded to him and sat down on the futon. "What mission?" the brother asked point blank. "Nothing dangerous. I just need to return one kunoichi to the clan." Nissan looked at me distrustfully. "It's Yasu, she's in trouble. I should get her out before the situation gets worse. Preferably unnoticed. I'll get to the outskirts of Gurin, Crane, City, and from there it's easy to get to the goal. Further on, it's more difficult." Getting to the city was not difficult. Having wandered around the streets for a bit, I waited until evening. In the establishment tier of the lady, I was greeted by the smell of alcohol and noise. Having gone to the table, I made an order. While I was waiting, I managed to find the right person. Another girl brought me the drink. Along with the glass, they handed me a note. Having drunk the contents in one gulp, I ran the chakra through my body, so it should not work. Having left the payment on the table, I went out and walked around the building. There, a woman of respectable age was already waiting for me. Not everyone can live to be 50 with our life. Having exchanged nods, they handed me Yasu, who was already dressed for the march. Having nodded to the girl, we headed out of the city by roundabout ways. We meandered for a long time. When we had already crossed the city wall, I felt the approaching chakra. Yasu does not have much chakra, she is more of an informant. Running away from the wall, I used the summoning. 5 ravens appeared. Having sent one with the kunoichi, I set a couple of traps and used henge in several layers. It is difficult to dispel it, and it is not so difficult for me to maintain it. It is an illusion, and for the Uchiha it is practically the basis. When the pursuers began to approach, and there were 3 of them, it became clear that it was Kurama. Smiling to herself, she pointed a wind blade and several kunai at them. The crows, who were hiding in the leaves of the trees, unsealed the throwing iron, which rained down on the enemy ninja. Someone was seriously hit, an explosion was heard. Having finished off the remaining one, she headed after Yasu. The guys were not strong shinobi and most likely did not expect an ambush, so it was not difficult. The rest of the journey passed without problems. It lasted 5 days. I met a shabby Nissan in the house. As it turned out, there had recently been another skirmish with Senju. Madara briefly told me about the fight, grumbling that he missed me, and that these Senju brothers were sitting in his liver. I listened, said that I would definitely not miss the next skirmish. My brother got upset and decided to prove to me that I was out of shape. In the end, we both had to go to the medics. Heavy breathing escaped from bloody lips. The beating of the heart echoed in the head, drowning out other sounds. It was difficult to concentrate, the hands trembled slightly, clutching the katana. Red eyes with Tomo rotating in them vigilantly watched the situation. Sensory systems worked at the limit. Catch the glint of a kunai, jump back. Notice the seal and leave as a substitute. Pick up a few stars with the fingers of your free hand and throw them back. Freeze and break away. Hear a rustle and jump forward with your weapon raised. Whining, a few drops of hot blood fall to the ground. A menacing growl. Catch the dog by the muzzle, jump back and send a fireball. The smell of scorched fur. A grin creeps onto his face. There is a rustle, and Inuzuka jumps out at me, growling and trying to grab my throat. A grin spreads across his face. My opponent has lost his temper, which means he has already surrendered. The enemy's quick and impetuous movements, which are very difficult to dodge, but possible, especially with such eyes. Let the growling guy, who is perhaps a little older than me, get closer. Allow him to touch and drive the kunai into his opponent's throat up to the hilt. The body fell over. Throwing the fresh corpse aside with disgust, I looked around. I couldn't feel the chakra anymore, only. Walking towards the whining, I saw a dog. The dog was still alive. I cut its throat with a katana and headed away. On the way I came across another corpse. Now that the fight was over and the adrenaline had subsided, the pain began to spread throughout my body. My left hand was not obeying me well, I had fallen on it quite well. Yes, 5 average ninjas with their dogs, that was quite a problem. There was no way to treat the wounds. All that was left was to quickly run to the border of the clan's lands, and then it would be easier. Having rummaged through the things of one of the corpses, I pulled out a scroll. That's what I need, she whispered barely audibly. The task is completed, the scroll with the data is in my possession. Having gathered chakra, I folded the seals, and Goro appeared before me. I handed him the scroll, with the order to take it to his father. I did not accept the bird's objections, and with nothing better to do, the raven flew off to complete the task. I quickly reached the border of the dog owners. Having left their territory, I began to look for a body of water. I found it quite quickly. Having washed the wounds, I treated them with grass that I found nearby, at least a little, but it should help. It's a pity that in our clan only those who have the element of water have healing techniques, otherwise it will not be possible to heal, we will rather cause more harm. You can just drive the chakra, but now this is unacceptable. They may notice, and you will not be able to leave quickly. After looking around, I decided to climb a tree and rest there. Sitting down, I hid my chakra, and since there was little of it, it turned out perfect. I didn't even notice how I fell asleep, the sleepless days took their toll. I woke up from sounds that were not typical for the forest. I slowly lowered my head down to the river and began to wait. A minute later, a shinobi came out from behind the trees. I blinked in surprise, I definitely didn't expect to see him here. Let's say their border is not that far, but still. While I was surprised, the guy sat down by the water. Of course, I could attack, but the chances that I would kill him with one kunai are 0. And I'm not yet able to fight, at least because of the low amount of chakra. I was lucky, and he didn't notice me only because it's easier and more imperceptible to hide a small amount, plus I'm not sitting on the ground, and he can't feel the vibrations of the ground. It seemed that I wasn't the only one who liked this place for a rest. Senju settled down right under the tree I was sitting on. I wanted to laugh hysterically. It was impossible to imagine a more absurd situation. Using a minimal amount of chakra, I covered my body with a thin web of genjutsu. If he looks at the place where I am sitting now, he won't notice me. Tobarama decided to take a nap, which upset me a little. I can't leave now. With nothing better to do, I decided to take a nap. I won't be able to fall asleep, and it's dangerous, I can lose control of the genjutsu. Senju fell asleep with the first rays of the sun. He slept for about 2 hours and then, he did it more to restore the reserve. Having waited until his chakra ceased to be felt, she went after him. The Inuzuka clan borders the Senju and Sarutobi clans, the Uchiha clan's territory is a little further. To get home, you either need to go along the border or through the territory of one of the enemy clans. The first option is more dangerous than the second, since there is a chance of running into 2 patrols at once. That's why I'm heading towards the Senju border now. Better there, you know the techniques. Following Tobik for a bit, I began to move along the border. It was dangerous to go deep, and the Sarutobi would not venture into the forest clan's territory. It was not difficult to reach the border, but I was distracted by large bursts of chakra. With vague suspicions, I moved in that direction. After a few kilometers, I came across a battlefield. My suspicions were justified. There was another skirmish with Senju. Having scanned my condition, I decided to help a little. Having singled out 2 ninja who were closest to me, I folded my seals and blew out the great fireball. Kunai with explosive seals flew after the technique. Having quickly left the scene of the attack, I looked at what happened. It turned out better than I expected. One died, the second will die soon. Several shinobi reacted to the explosion. Having listened to the chakra, I nodded. It should work. I took out my katana, directed the wind chakra to it. The chakra accelerated its run. A jump and the unexpected Senju dies, losing his head. Someone threw a kunai, I dodge. There is not enough chakra for the technique, so nothing flew at him in response. One enemy came too close, deciding to impose close combat on me, and I do not mind. During the battle, I noticed the chakra from behind. Having waited for the technique to form, I am transferred by replacement. One of our own wounded one of our own. I killed the one who attacked from behind. He didn't have time to react, he got confused. I couldn't finish off the victim. The water dragon, although not as powerful as the white rats, made him hide among the trees. I chuckled, turned around and went towards the clan. I've already done a lot. Having reached home, I found a first aid kit and began to treat the wounds. It was stupid to strain the Irionans for the sake of my carcass. Our warriors would return soon, they would need help. Garo was sitting in my room. Izuna-sama, how are you? The worried raven began to circle around me. Fine. Did you give me the scroll? She stretched out on the futon. I should go wash myself, but I have no strength. Yes. When I brought him, Taijima was still here. The bird, having made a few more circles, sat on the pillow and made a nest out of my hair. Catching my angry look, Goro only got more tangled up in my hair. Snorting at him, I closed my eyes. I almost fell asleep, but someone pulled my hair painfully. Roaring, I jerked up. The raven, entangled in my hair, hung on me, stupidly flapping its wings. Angrily, baring my teeth, I entered the bathroom. The raven with a drawn-out car began to beat harder. This did not save him. We are sitting, me and the raven. Garo looks at me sadly and tries to wrap himself in a towel. I dry my hair. I not only wet the bird, but also washed him with soap. Now he sits wet, but shiny. Izuna-sama, please dry me, the raven drawled sadly. With such guilty eyes, looking at me. I, accordingly, ignore him. I apologize, but, Izuna-sama, I'm cold. Goro really was shivering. With an annoying hiss, she began to dry the raven with a towel. She didn't have enough chakra for her own body, let alone a bird. The summon was enjoying the towel and quietly purred. Having dried him to a more decent appearance, she finally went to bed. The raven quietly crawled to my side and also dozed off. The sound of the shoji woke me up. I lazily opened my eyes and saw Madara. I rolled over onto my side and was about to sleep some more, but I was pulled out of bed by the scruff of my neck like a naughty kitten. I sleepily opened my eyes and stared at Nissan with displeasure. He was glaring at me. It lasted for a couple of seconds, then Madara let go of his hand and I fell onto the futon. I landed awkwardly on a sleepy bird. With a loud cry, it soared up to the ceiling and began circling there. Nissan looked at me and then at the bird, confused. It seemed he hadn't noticed it. Nissan, what's wrong? I decided to speak up. I was brutally woken up, and this despite the fact that I was terribly tired and wanted to sleep. Madara woke up from my words and began to drill me with his gaze again. I raised an eyebrow in surprise. Where did I manage to screw up? Why did you go to the battlefield? You just came back from a mission, you should have gone home. What if you were wounded? This wasn't your battle. Why don't you ever think about yourself? I listened to his tyranny with half an ear. If the beginning was interesting, then the rest was not so much. For about 5 minutes he yelled at me, nervously pacing the room from corner to corner. Finally, having yelled enough, He sat down on the edge of the futon and grabbed the bird, squeezing it nervously. Goro looked at me pleadingly. Has it gotten easier? Having waited for his nod, she began to slowly take the bird from him. He gave in reluctantly, squeezing him tighter. They managed to take the raven, but instead of him, they grabbed me in an armful. I was worried and bored, Madara said quietly, hugging me tightly. Me too. But, brother, I acted carefully and left immediately when there was danger, I said, quietly stroking him. I understand him and that's why I'm not angry. He's just worried. Nissan nodded. Without thinking, I pushed him onto the bed and, moving to his side, fell asleep. Brother never stopped hugging me. Madara, don't, I babbled, slowly backing away from my brother, who was smiling madly. He shook his head cheerfully and came at me. Squealing, I ran away. I hopped between the houses like a hare. Our clanmates followed us with laughing glances. Only a few looked at us disapprovingly, and even then they were our beloved elders. Quickly making seals, I summoned 2 ravens, which flew off in different directions. Run, run. A child jumped out at me from one side. Quickly dodging his bomb, I threw my own in response. Smack. I got it. Turning the corner, I ran into 2 teenagers and a child. Smack, and began to quickly approach. 2 of them got confused and forgot to throw their shells. The third one's bomb almost got me. I took 3 balls out of my pouch. Smack. There are 3 more. I can't stop. I felt chakra, stopped and seeped into the alley, noticed the annoyance on Nissan's face. Move. She shouted cheerfully and swapped places with the raven. She found herself on the roof of the building. Looking around, she noticed her own. The guys nodded to me. So it was time. She found the source of her brother's chakra. Not far, then. She ran to intercept him. 2 balls appeared in her hands. She threw them and both missed. But he also failed to hit me. She turned around and ran to her destination. A few more meters. She gave a sign. I turn around, but Madara is not behind me. I quickly find his chakra, but I can't get away. Shoo. I'm standing there all wet and blue. Madara smirks. Smiling at him with the sweetest smile, she waves her hand. Shoo. Now Madara is all red too. It's a draw, the teenager declared. All the participants of the battle gathered around us. After a short conversation, they dispersed. After exchanging glances with my brother, we rushed home. My brother overtook me. I screamed indignantly and began to catch up with him. I flew into the doorway and noticed an interesting picture. Madara was lying onto sand. Taijima was trying to get out, but the slippery paint was preventing him from doing so. Snorting, I fell on top of them with the most unperturbed look. I heard a hissing sound. What are you doing? Father had not yet made any clear attempts to break free, he only looked at us indignantly. Sorry, Odo-san, there was not a drop of remorse in my voice. Giggling, I began to roll on them. Izuna! They yelled in unison. With an unperturbed look, I began to get off them, trying to hit them as hard as possible. As soon as I got off them, I rushed into the bathroom and locked it with the bolt. A second later, there was a knock on the door. Daughter, come out, such a kind voice made me shudder. No, Daddy, I'd rather sit here, she noticed the window out of the corner of her eye. Smiling, I quickly climbed out of it. Hiding my chakra, I galloped off into the forest. I'll be back when it cools down. I quickly began to go deeper into the forest. I somehow didn't think about where to go, and it was unexpected for me when I came to the river. The same river where Madara played with Senju as a child. I sat down on the bank and began to wash myself. I heard a rustle. I raised my head and ran into Red Eyes. Exo said goodbye in my head. I don't have a weapon. In my pouch there are only paintballs from today's game. While I was trying to figure out what to do, Senju looked at me in surprise. Well, yes, when you see your enemy covered from head to toe in paint, you're not so surprised. I was wearing my brother's paint too. Blue with a touch of red. What are you staring at, Senju? I growled irritably. My voice sobered him up. He looked at me again and grinned. Where have you been, Uchiha? I look at him angrily. So you want to know? A crazy thought makes me smile involuntarily. I quickly pull the balls out of my pouch and throw them at Senju. The sword block he put up doesn't help, but the opposite. The shell breaks, and Tobirama gets into a cloud of red paint. Laughing cheerfully, I use the replacement and run away. From the author. Today Tobirama decided to walk through the territory of his clan, who knew that it would turn out to be a problem for him. He wandered to the other bank by accident. It was surprising to see Uchiha there, but what shocked him most was the appearance of Uchiha himself. All in blue paint, somewhere he even noticed red. Uchiha looked relaxed and even somewhat pleased. While Izuna did not notice him, Tobirama managed to get a good look at his enemy. There was no indifference, his eyes were alive, damn, he was even smiling. Smiling Uchiha, that was what was a big shock for him, and he looked ridiculous. When Uchiha noticed him, he tensed up. He even noticed panic in him, which disappeared almost immediately. That emotionless expression appeared again. It felt like they were two different people. Tobirama looked at Izuna with undisguised interest, trying to understand where he had managed to get himself into such a mess. The angry statement fit perfectly with Uchiha's behavior. Already hoping for a good fight, he was disappointed. The first sign of caution was a smile, a mischievous smile, which made Tobirama, probably for the first time, feel scared. What did Uchiha have to think of to lose control of his emotions? But his further action stunned him. The throw of 3 projectiles, which Senju cut purely on reflexes. The cloud of paint was a complete surprise, and the laughter even more so. When Tobirama stepped away and realized that he was now no less of a scarecrow than the Uchiha himself, he was overcome with rage. But he would not be able to catch up with the Joker, he had run too far. Turning on the spot, Senju disappeared into the shadows of the trees and went towards the clan's lands, never noticing the black bird on the tree. An attempt to wash off the paint in the first pond was unsuccessful. The guess that it would only wash off with hot, or at worst warm, water made Senju go berserk. Muttering curses at one particular Uchiha, Tobirama entered the camp. Passing Senju, they looked askance at the white-haired man in bewilderment. Near the house, his brother met him. He looked at him in surprise and began to laugh, trying to ask something incoherently. Tobirama angrily growled at his brother and flew into the bathtub like a bullet. When he had completely gotten rid of the paint, he went out. His cheerful brother was waiting in his room. Tobirama, where did you find the paint? Uchiha, the albino growled angrily. Uchiha gave you the paint? The surprise in his voice was so genuine that Tobirama didn't even suspect his brother of mockery. No. He threw it at me. Tobirama waved his hands in irritation. Stop. And Uchiha threw paint at you? Hashirama laughed at the thought, earning a reproachful look. The elder man, slightly embarrassed, looked apologetically at Tobirama. Yes. How did this happen? The albino briefly retold what had happened. At the end of the story, Hashirama was rolling on the floor laughing. Tobirama looked at his brother as if he were crazy. From Izuna. When I returned home, Madara and Taijima had already calmed down. But since the Uchiha are quite vengeful, my father loaded me with papers for 3 days, at best. Madara acted more emotionally. He called me to the training ground and rolled me in the dust. I was not offended, but I had already thought up revenge. Tomorrow will be fun. There shouldn't be any skirmishes anytime soon. True, there's tension within Izuka, but me and my brother should be enough for these dog lovers to shut up. Fire hurricane technique, the training dummy shatters into pieces. With an annoyed hiss, I form a series of seals and blow out a fireball. And if? I jump onto one of the trees standing here. A long series of seals. Fire dragon song technique, a tree that was nearby fell with a loud crack. Flames danced and ate the wood. Exhaling heavily, she sat down on a branch. Examining her hand, she saw slight burns on her fingertips. This had never happened before. She must have put in too much chakra. Izuna-sama, you're destroying the training ground again. Yasu shook her head. She looked at the girl and didn't answer, continuing to look at the burning tree. A burst of chakra and the burning tree covered the earth dome. She glanced at the girl with displeasure. She just shrugged. "Why did you come, Yasu?" I jump off the branch and head towards the Uchiha who interrupted me. "You've been acting strange lately." Her searching gaze doesn't touch me. "What makes you think that?" I stop when I reach her level, keeping an eye on Yasu out of the corner of my eye. "Everyone in the clan has noticed that you have started destroying polygons more often than usual, and Madara-sama is not with you. Did something happen?" I think for a moment, trying to figure out what to answer. "I have a bad feeling," I say, without saying another word, and walk towards the house. "Tusen wanted to see me." The wooden floor echoes, further depressing my mood. I knock 3 times and, with permission, enter. I notice something new in Taijima. I turn on the jutsu for a second. He frowns more than usual, his eyebrows are drawn together. I see determination in his eyes, not the usual coldness. There are fewer papers on the table than usual. My maneuver was noticed, which is not surprising, but they only nodded at it. Oto-san exhaled tiredly and leaned back in his chair. A moment of relaxation, in which I had not seen him for a long time after Kasan died. "I want you to look after your brother." The eyebrow arches itself in a puzzled gesture. Father no longer looks so relaxed, but he is still practically lying on the chair. "You must not let him leave the village tonight, and now this is interesting." "What are you planning?" This is probably the first time I address my father so familiarly. He just smirks. "Our observer was able to figure out which route Butsuma would take. We want to set up an ambush." My father looked at me expectantly, waiting for my opinion. "What if this is an ambush?" He just shrugged his shoulders at my question. So, this option was also considered. "What is my duty?" As I said, keep Madara in the village. Around 2 o'clock in the morning, a raven will fly to you, who will tell you the outcome of the battle. If we lose, take our bodies. He thought for a while. "The next leader will be Madara, look after him, he is a heavy burden." With this our conversation ended. For some reason I was sure that this was the last time I could talk to my father. It was useless to dissuade him, and I couldn't disobey his orders. But I knew one thing for sure, if Taijima died, Butsuma wouldn't live either. I'd make sure of that. The Sharingan flashed in his eyes. It wasn't hard to get Madara drunk. He liked to drink, and I didn't agree often. Now my brother is sleeping peacefully downstairs in his room. There's an aging moon in the sky. Sitting on the roof, I peered into the forest mist. I noticed Goro half a kilometer away from me and ran to meet him. He brought the news that was expected. Using chakra, I ran at full speed towards the recent battle. I couldn't get there that fast, it was still far away. When I reached my goal, I saw ashes. All the grass was burnt, and the soot was sloshing around with water. It wasn't hard to find the bodies of my comrades. I sat down next to my father, kissed him on the forehead and burned them all with a funeral fire, taking one of their things from each of them, to return to their families. The Manjikyu Sharingan began to spin in my eyes. The first time I summoned so many crows. It wasn't hard to catch up with Senju, they weren't expecting a chase. I managed to kill the first 2 right away, cutting their throats. There were 7 of them. Thin threads of illusions had already begun to weave around this place. Of my enemies, only 1 would survive, and only to convey the news of the clan leader's death at my hands. Time practically slowed down. It was hard to catch me, because I almost immediately disintegrated into crows, whose eyes had exactly the same pattern. Butsuma burned in the fire of my eyes, Amaterasu. I plunged the last warrior of the forest clan into Genjutsu. After he conveys the information to his people, he himself will cut his throat. I returned to the clan in the morning, covered in blood. When Madara, who had already recovered from his hangover, found out everything, he yelled at me for a long time, and then sank into despondency and cold anger for 2 weeks. And then we really drank all day, complaining about fate to each other. For a whole month after that incident, there were no skirmishes between our clans. But then, the warriors began to fight with even greater ferocity. And in Tobarama's gaze, now forever, there settled hatred for me, which I revel in. From the author. The entire clan was waiting for Butsuma's return. Just before dawn, a lookout saw one of their warriors who was completely battered. The entire clan gathered to listen to him. The words he said then made Tobarama dream of killing the younger Uchiha, and a great weight fell on Hashirama's shoulders. What happened next scared almost everyone. The warrior cut his throat, and as he fell, a raven flew out of his throat and disappeared into the cloud. The mourning lasted for almost a month. And after that, the battles became even more brutal, which made Hashirama grieve. End of part 1. Flashback. It was a normal task that didn't put much stress on Izuna. It was easy, her brother gave it to her to distract her. On her way back to the clan, she stopped near a large tree. This place hadn't been touched by battles. It was quiet and beautiful. The task wasn't urgent, so she decided to sit there for a while. Having climbed the tree and sat on one of the branches, Izuna looked at the trees and the sky. It was nice. How long she sat like that, she couldn't say for sure. The sun had already passed noon. Although when she stopped, it had just risen. She only noticed the ninja's chakra as he passed nearby because she never completely relaxed outside the house. She could have simply ignored it. He wasn't coming here, and she wasn't in the mood to fight, but something made Izuna jump off. Senju stopped for a moment and, turning towards her, began to approach. She waited for him calmly, although she knew that he would immediately rush to fight. A kunai fell into her hands by itself, and she began to twirl it. It wasn't hard to dodge the water bullet. The red eyes looked at him with anger and anticipation, but Izuna decided to break it. "Tell me, Senju, have you found anything from your father?" Tobarama shuddered and growled fiercely. Dodging the kunai was easy again. Senju was too wound up to attack clearly, and because he himself was not so emotional, it brought him more problems. "No?" Too bad, the sadness in his voice was very faint. "Although I fried him with a special technique, it's not surprising." The simple-minded shrug of his shoulders pissed Tobarama off so much that he nevertheless looked into the Uchiha's eyes for a second and immediately fell into a Jinjutsu. Izuna herself did not understand why she did it, why she showed her feelings in this technique when she saw her father's body. Maybe because in order for Madara not to go crazy, she needs to stay alive, and for that, there needs to be peace, and for the world of the evil Tobarama thirsting for revenge, it is not the best thing that can be. The downside of the technique is that Izuna had to relive that day again. The side effect of the eyes is not only their gradual loss of vision, but also their perfect memory. You will never forget what you saw with those eyes. After the technique, Tobarama fell down, heavily gulping air. Izuna squatted in front of him and lightly ruffled his hair. "It's an eternal circle," she said, and flew away like a multitude of crows. Senju lay there for about an hour, unable to come to his senses. The Uchiha's perception is greater, they are more emotional, even if they don't show it. The Uchiha are flames that burn fiercely and flow through their veins. Senju are water, which can also be a turbulent stream, but it cannot destroy itself. Commentary on Chapter 4. Death of Taijima and Butsuma. Bachino. Part 2. Union. It has been dark outside for a long time. The wind is rustling outside the slightly open window, and the grasshoppers are chirping. In the room where I was, 2 fuses were burning, so it is easier to see what is written. Now I am sorting through the clan's papers. Madara can no longer do this. His vision is getting worse with each use of Manjikyu, and he forbids me to use this technique. Although it is understandable, of the 2 of us, at least one of us should have good vision. Our medics cannot cope with this phenomenon. The last year, the situation has become tense both in the clan and on the battlefield. Women do not want to lose children and husbands. People have become tired of war. But outside the clan, it was even worse. Those clans that are weaker than us, but strong enough to still exist, began to make attempts to raid our lands. So far, these are only attempts, but everything can get more complicated. Some small clans have become impudent, forgetting their place. According to our sources, the Senju are also suffering from this, although they are supported by Uzushio. The situation is not rosy. At this rate, in about 50 years, the Uchiha will begin to lose their positions. The Hyuga, who once broke the treaty with our clan and paid for it by destroying half of their clan, have gained strength during the time that they were forgotten and have begun to look down on our clan with arrogance. They need to be taught a lesson, but it is stupid to waste warriors on this. I can go with a small group and scare them, but for some reason I was sure that this would not help. At least one plus, the Senju are also not so fixated on our skirmishes now. Everyone is tired. The door creaked quietly. My brother froze in the doorway, looking at me appraisingly. He exhaled loudly and resolutely approached me. Raising his head, I began to wait. Having settled himself more comfortably, he directed his frowning gaze at me. Izuna, remember, you said that you would always be on my side. She raised an eyebrow in surprise and nodded. I will, and I will never change my mind. I decided to clarify my answer. His face smoothed out a little, and he looked thoughtfully out the window. I didn't interfere. Since he came, it means he made up his mind, and it's hard for him to make concessions. He doesn't consider it anything else. I decided to try to form an alliance with the Senju clan, and I need your help. He frowned more and more with each word. Waiting for assignments, Chief, she bowed playfully in a sitting position. Brother snorted and relaxed a little. Half of the clan is ready for this, I'll even say more, they're waiting for it. Mostly it's the female part. Ninjas who are about the same age as you won't be against it either. There are only hot-headed teenagers left who only want battles, but they can be redirected. The elders will also be against it. These nasty old, they didn't let me finish. Izuna, how do you know all this? Nisan's gaze was stunned. I keep an eye on the clan's affairs and the mood of my clanmates. They looked at me suspiciously. This, of course, is not the whole truth, but if I say that I was only waiting for his command to act, he will be offended. I don't need that. Having drilled me with such a look, he exhaled heavily and closed his eyes. They saw through me, annoying, but okay. So, you'll be looking for where to direct the energy of the youth. My attempt to be indignant was not accepted and they quickly dumped me out the window. Why did I get this? The question hung in the silence. Exhaling, she took up the papers again. For 2 whole weeks I had to run back and forth around the settlement. To visit the elders and persuade them that this was necessary. It was difficult to persuade these old senile creatures, and even then I was only given a month of experimental time. I also had to visit the parents and guardians of the teenagers who would be participating in this. Almost everyone gave permission for this, thanks to the fact that they trusted me. Then I had to talk to the participants themselves, who did not quite understand the meaning of this. The idea was to send the youngsters to carry out tasks for ordinary people, while not revealing them as Uchiha. Disguise training and experience communicating with peasants. They must pretend to be clanless shinobi who want to earn a little money. In order for Uchiha from 10 to 16 years old to decide to at least try, I had to give my word that if they successfully completed the tasks, I would teach them any technique. The first 10 people have already left. They must return every day. In case of danger they were given papers. When chakra was fed into them, they called one of my ravens, who would have to call me. We also had to agree on this and do it as soon as possible. Brother has already started to implement the idea of an alliance with Senju. Soon a council will be held, in which Madara will announce his decision. Then the most interesting part will begin, negotiations with Senju, and first it is necessary to talk to Hashirama, as the bearer of this idea, but I have doubts that he will be able to persuade his clan to an agreement by instilling the need for an alliance. Tobarama would be useful here, but his cooperation in this is doubtful. The clan council is boring as always. Discussing the same thing quickly gets boring, but everyone keeps a stone face and continues to act smart. I would laugh, but it would be a bad time to ruin people's attitude towards myself. My brother shrugged his shoulders, which meant it would start soon. I'm going to make peace with the Senju clan, and there was silence, deadly. Elder Ketsu was the first to pull himself together. What is your solution? This is probably the only adequate old man, by the way, he is 34. Everyone knows that the Uchiha's authority is falling. Most of the clans that were silent before are starting to gain strength and are not against demonstrating it. My brother nodded to me. There is information that hidden villages are starting to form in other countries. The forests of the Land of Fire have a lot of resources, and the clans that live here have their own characteristics. No clan will be against diluting their blood with a strong genome. Exchanging glances, we began to wait for them to comprehend everything. If they don't get it, there are other arguments. Those who do not want to understand, only one thing awaits. The council, as it turned out, was understanding, and these arguments were enough for it. Then there was a discussion of everything that was needed for this. After the council, they began to convey this to everyone in the clan. An hour later, the head's house was surrounded by our clanmates, who hurried to ask questions and find out everything from the head. Everything went more or less well. Uchiha remembered the dissatisfied ones. I was not with my brother, but from a tree I looked at everyone gathered. A few days later, an unofficial message was sent to Hashirama. How Madara managed it, I don't know, but I suspect that the method of communication had developed over the years. My words, spoken almost 5 years ago, bore fruit. Commentary on Part 2. Union. Bacino. == Part 2. Chapter 1. Letter and informal meeting. Hashirama responded to the letter quickly, and with such enthusiasm that he sent 2 sheets of paper filled with notes expressing his delight. Madara's face was indescribable. I even remembered it with the help of the Sharingan. Nisan noticed this and ran around the room after me, and when he caught me, he began to squeeze me. Having calmed down, we sat hugging on the floor. Well, and? I couldn't finish reading, because I considered reading all this to be harmful to my psyche. Madara looked at me reproachfully. Made cat eyes. He agreed to meet. A chuckle escaped by itself. Where I met him as a child, she nodded and looked at him carefully, waiting for him to continue. You and I will have to come, well, and he and his brother. This, in principle, is understandable. The albino will not let him go alone. Time, she said, leaning her head back on her brother's shoulder and relaxing. Tomorrow, after lunch, tomorrow, that is. After that incident with Tobirama by the tree, we haven't crossed paths except on the battlefield, and there's no longer such a display of emotion from him. We were a bit hasty. When we arrived, Senju was not there yet. Having nothing better to do, I climbed a tree and waited there. My brother leaned against him. I was the first to notice them and gave a signal to Madara. First, Hashirama appeared on the riverbank, smiling happily. Tobirama followed him, looking gloomy as a cloud. Hello, Madara. Senju Sr. almost went to hug Nisan. Tobirama only nodded. Having sympathized with her brother, she did not climb down from the tree, and did not give away her location in any way. Hello to you too. Madara showed that he was no longer happy about this meeting. Where is your brother, Izuna? Senju began to turn his head. The albino immediately looked at the tree where I was sitting. Grasping the branch with my feet, I turned over. The rustling of leaves was heard and the world appeared before me upside down. Hashirama stared at me in surprise. Hello. Hashirama looked somewhat surprised when he said this. Nodding in response, she sat back down on the tree. So what about the alliance? He quickly switched. Senju's mischievous look knocked down all the seriousness of what was happening. Madara began to explain our plan to him. He nodded and said that Tobirama would deal with it. The aforementioned one looked sour. I can give you my findings. Senju Jr. looked at me suspiciously, but nodded. Having quickly printed out the necessary folder, I passed it on via the Raven. I was too lazy to get up. One word led to another. Madara challenged Hashirama to a friendly duel, and now they are destroying everything in sight. It's good that they moved away from the tree I'm sitting on. How do you feel about this? Having heard the question, I turned my head to Tobirama, who was not looking at me, but was carefully watching the fight. I will always be on Madara's side. I see no point in hiding it. Yes, to be honest, I don't believe in peace, but there is no reason not to believe in those visions. And that's the only reason you support this plan? He turned his head towards me now. There is no other choice anyway. We cannot survive alone, and of all the clans, only you are known well enough. The next moment I had to dodge a piece of wood flying in my direction. Having landed next to Senju Jr., I folded the seals. Uchiha Flame Formation, I quietly said the name of the technique, touching the ground with my hand. We were surrounded by a wall of fire, which was very high. Tobarama looked from me to the wall in surprise. Izuna, take it off. We won't do it again, Nisan's muffled voice came through the barrier. The technique dissipated. I glared at Madara and Hashirama, they lowered their heads guiltily. After this incident, we parted ways. The Senju brothers will have to contact us. We were met by excited clanmates in the clan. Having sent my brother to rest, I began to answer their questions, which took about an hour. After that, having checked the time, I went to the training ground, where the Uchiha would soon arrive, who had completed the task for the peasants. I didn't have to wait long for them. Hello Izuna-sama, the guys greeted me. This is the first 6 who started going and doing such tasks. Chikiko, Yuri, Izao, Ayuoo, Kenta, and Michi. Have you decided what kind of equipment you want to see today? The guys nodded in unison. We finished training only towards evening. Having said goodbye to them, I went home and got down to clan affairs. Commentary on Part 2. Chapter 1. Letter and informal meeting. Bacino. == Part 2. Chapter 2. The World of Summoning. == I looked at the 3 idiots from the Senju clan with a nonchalant expression. These children had come to take revenge on the Uchiha clan for their relatives, and in the end they were hanging upside down on a fishing line. It was good that the Uchiha who tied them up told me instead of killing them. Nobu, that same Uchiha, was sitting next to me in a tree and listening to their screams. Izuna-sama, I turned my head to him, showing that I was listening, can't we shut them up? The bloodthirsty smile scared the tied-up teenagers, but I can see that he's mocking me. Don't touch. We'll also end up guilty. But we'll get compensation from Senju, I smile in anticipation. Nobu looks at me with interest and nods. Having nothing better to do, she started playing with the kunai. She tied a blue ribbon to the ring and started twirling it. The weapon cut through the air with a quiet whistle. I was so carried away that I almost missed Tobarama's appearance. Reflexively, I released the kunai, and seconds later it stuck next to Senju's head. Blinking in surprise, I followed the blue ribbon that fell down. You took too long, I said, as if I hadn't just nearly made a hole in him. Tobarama looked again at the kunai and at me, then turned his gaze to his frozen clanmates. Let them go? She nodded and threw a kunai charged with wind chakra into the line that held the bound Senju. They fell down with a crash. We jumped from the tree after them. Tobarama began examining and questioning the teenagers, even hitting one on the head. Nobu and I just stood nearby and talked about where to look for my kunai, each of us offered different options. We apologize, the boys reluctantly bowed along with Tobarama. Although he held the boys by the heads. Nobu certainly didn't expect this and froze in surprise. Yes, it's not every day that a recent enemy apologizes to you. You were lucky this time. Nobu is loyal to my brother and me, but what would have happened if we had come across a Senju hater? I didn't wait for an answer to the question, I just turned around and went to collect my kunai. Nobu nodded to Tobarama and jumped up next to me. When we were returning to the settlement, it turned out that Nobu was hunting and accidentally stumbled upon Senju. He responded positively to the offer of help, and we changed our course. Having reached a small clearing, we built several traps for hares. We also set snares for birds. Having decided not to chase the animals, but just wait, we went to the river to fish. Either I have forgotten how to do this, or Nobu is a good fisherman. During the entire fishing I caught 2 small fish, and Uchiha 5. Having sealed the catch, we headed to the traps. Only 2 of them caught prey. 1 partridge and a hare. It was decided to update the traps and leave them. When I got home, I gave the animals to the worker. My brother and I don't have time to do housework and cooking, so Hotaru works for us. Although I can cook, I rarely do it, only on Nisan's birthday. Madara was found in his room. He looked tired. He was currently training his clansmen. Sitting down next to him, I noticed that he was not sleeping. How are you? She laid her head on her brother's chest and listened to his steady heartbeat. Not really, he grimaced. And you? 3 Senju were caught today, Nisan tensed up. Alive and well. Nobukuin caught them and called me. Tobarama came for them. By the way, do you want me to show you something? Jumping up from Madara, I looked him in the eyes. He nodded. Activating the Sharingan, I showed him the moment where Senju apologizes. A satisfied smile spread across my brother's face. He hugged me and ruffled my hair. What I remembered. I lost the ribbon when I almost killed Tobarama. Madara laughed at my innocent face. Only you can accidentally almost kill. They squeezed me and turned me on my side. Good night. Good night. I woke up because someone was staring at me. I released a current of chakra and caught echoes of someone else's. I instantly jumped up and spat a fireball at random. There was a roar and someone's curses. Only then did I deign to open my eyes. An interesting picture was in front of me. A broken wall of my brother's room, a crumpled Hashirama lying nearby, and Tobarama standing. Traces of fire were visible on the tree, and there was steam in the room. It was not hard to guess what happened, but damn, what were they doing here? You will restore the wall yourselves, I say in a sepulchral voice. Hashirama nodded. A groan was heard from below. I lowered my head and saw that I was standing on Madara. I quickly jumped off and Nisan. Nisan, how are you? I sit down next to him, worried. How come you didn't wake up from the stranger's presence and the noise? If you make me Onigiri, I'll be great, Madara said, squinting, pretending to be mortally wounded. There is no holiday today, and in general, get up, this is for you. I nod my head in the direction of those who arrived. Who let you in here? Madara started to rise menacingly. Hashirama was beaming with happiness, he just wanted to do something nasty. And not only did they let us in, they drove us to it. That's who would have been better off keeping quiet. The albino shouldn't have raised his voice. Madara frowned and began to look witheringly at Senju. It was a shame, but Hashi wasn't moved. Ha ha ha, come on. We didn't know you were still asleep. Had Senju scratched the back of his head, showing with all his appearance that he didn't do it on purpose, but he didn't regret it either. Having drilled them with a look, she stood up and headed to her room. While she washed and changed, they moved to the kitchen. I determined this by the sound. On the way to the kitchen, I was met by Madara's pleading eyes. I even froze from this and began to look for ways to retreat. Izuana, make Onigiri, I jerked and rushed to the window. Kso, I forgot, Hotaru won't be here today, she asked for time off. They grabbed me by the tail and gently pulled me inside. Clutching the frame with my hands, I attached them with chakra. Do it yourself. No, I can cook, but damn, I don't want to. Looking into his eyes, I gave in. Exhaling heavily, I allowed myself to be dragged into the house. The Senju were watching our scene with curiosity. Evil, having glanced at them, headed to the pantry for food. There, she pointed to the door for everyone. Brother almost skipped towards the door. He grabbed the frozen ones by the scruff of the neck and pulled them out of the kitchen. Having found what she needed, she washed the rice and put it on to cook. Nori seaweed was not found. Having folded the seals, she summoned Goro. Izuna-sama, the raven greeted. Goro, if you help me, I'll treat you to Onigiri? I looked slyly at the bird. Bowing his head, he flew up and did a somersault in the air. What do I need to do? Goro sat on my shoulder. Fly to the market and bring Nori, Ryo handed him a few. The raven nodded understandingly and, taking the money, flew out the window. The rice cooked quickly, no one forbade me to use ninjutsu. Having cooled it with futon, I began to make balls. The filling will be fish and shrimp, my brother does not like caviar. Goro arrived on time. Quickly wrapping the onigiri in seaweed, I sent Goro for Madara and Senju. I had a premonition that they would eat them too. While the raven was flying, I poured green tea into mugs. It smells delicious, she shrugged, it smelled like rice. Everyone went into the kitchen and settled down. Goro's plate was next to me. Raven, landing on the edge, began to eat onigiri. Thank you for the food, everyone said, almost in unison. Why did you come? Having finished eating, Madara leaned back in his chair. We just dropped by to visit, Senju Sr. smiled sweetly. Why do I already want to kill him? Maybe you won't waste your time then and go sort out the agreements for the clan union? Nissan looked at me sadly, but nodded and he and Hashirama left. Tobirama, strangely, stayed. I raise an eyebrow and look at him, he simply shrugs in response. Goro sat on my shoulder again. Out of boredom, I began to stroke him. Izuna-sama, the raven cooed, languishing and closing his eyes. MMM? I stopped petting him. Don't you want to take part in the new flight? XO. I forgot. She looked at the raven, embarrassed. To forget the holiday of her summoning. But. Having looked at Goro, she glanced sideways at Senju. I don't think the nest chief will mind. Yeah, he won't, he'll just bury him there, if not worse. I hope they don't fight. Senju, you're coming with me. I take a few steps closer to Tobirama and put my hand on his shoulder. Before he could do anything, we disappeared in a cloud of smoke. We appeared on a stone ledge. The world of my summoning consists of many mountains and forests. Crows live in caves on the top of the mountains. What is interesting is that the mountains here are quite high, but only one mountain top has snow. Blackbirds were sitting on the rocks around. What is this place? Senju looked at everything with concentration. The world of my calling, I say with a smile. Why am I here? Aren't there too many questions? Did you think I would leave you unattended in the clan? I look mockingly at the albino. They nodded understandingly. I looked at the rock and walked to the edge. On the slope just below sat some recently grown crows. Today they will make their first flight. I was invited to watch them. In my memory, this is the 5th time I have been invited here. This is how the bonds between us are strengthened. I sat down on the rock and lowered my legs. Hi, I thought out loud. A loud sound was heard above my ear, from which I jumped and almost flew down. I was grabbed by the collar. I raised my head and saw a large raven, which was bigger than me. Hello, Disuk-sama. I couldn't bow, because the raven continued to hold me. This is the chief of the ravens. It was he who allowed me to conclude a summoning with them, and at that time I already had a summoning. Izuna-chan, you're in a hurry. Disuk finally let me go and scolded me. I lowered my head guiltily. Nodding, the leader of the ravens took off, and the young ones rushed down. Peeking out from behind the visor, I saw the young ravens learning to fly. I raised my head and looked intently at Disuk, then pointed with my eyes at the albino. The raven laughed, the sound was like gurgling. Senju, come here. If it weren't for my good control of emotions, the plan could have been lost. Tobirama looked at me in bewilderment, but approached the ledge. The leader flew into Senju's back with speed, and he expectedly flew down. Laughing, I jumped after him. Jumping from a great height is an unforgettable feeling. At first it may be scary, but then it fades into the background. The wind at a huge speed crashes into the body without causing pain. If you know how, you can take any comfortable position, but if you turn wrong, you can skid and start spinning. Turning over on my back, I looked at Senju. Tobirama was falling face down, his eyes closed. The strong wind simply wouldn't let him open them. Snorting, I spun around, kicking him in the back. He jerked, and turned his head to the side, in my direction. I demonstratively held my breath and pinched my nose, pointing down with my other hand. He nodded. 3 seconds later, we fell into the water with a crash. I hope he managed to group himself. I don't want to return the body to Hashirama. I swam out and began to gulp air greedily. It was deep here. Brushing my hair from my face, I swam to the shore. When I got out of the water completely, I looked around and saw Senju swimming towards the shore. He looked gloomy. Maybe I forgot him here by accident. You're crazy, and I don't know. Apparently, my look was too eloquent, because he hissed in annoyance and began to pull off his t-shirt. Lucky. I looked sadly at my clothes and leaned back on the ground. I closed my eyes. Something fell on my face. I opened my eye and looked at Senju, who was so brazenly splashing water on my face. Take off your clothes, you'll get sick. It took me a lot of effort not to blush. I snorted and swirled chakra around my body. My clothes dried in an instant, as did my hair. I looked at Tobirama skeptically. They didn't answer me. I have to go back. We need to go back. The albino thoughtfully looked at the trees and the fruits on them. Since when do you read minds? Pick them, they're edible, Sev yawned. Goro sat on my shoulder. Izuna-sama, should I bring you back? She nodded. Quickly standing up, she picked a couple of fruits from the tree and threw one to Tobirama. It really pissed me off how he hypnotized him. Take it. We're leaving, nodding. Senju picked up the t-shirt and put the fruit in his pocket. He touched my shoulder, and we went back. As soon as the smoke cleared, Madara immediately attacked us. Squeezing me and pulling me away from Senju Jr., he began to examine me. I looked at my brother in bewilderment. As soon as I looked at Hashirama, more questions appeared. Why is he roaring? Tobik seemed to be surprised too. Nissan began to ask something quickly, looking sideways at the albino with hostility. Quiet. My brother fell silent, and the Senju froze. Explain what happened. As soon as I looked at Nissan, he shuddered. It's scary to look at a person's face when it doesn't express anything, just like the eyes. Well, you disappeared, I started looking for you. Madara told me not to worry, but he started helping me anyway. We've been looking for you for an hour, we decided to have a bite to eat, and then you show up. She looked skeptically at Hashirama and turned her gaze to Madara. I'll explain later. Nissan looked away from me, glaring at Senju Jr. like a wolf. She looked at Tobirama and laughed. The albino was shirtless, that's Madara. Nissan, you're something else. She looked mockingly at her brother, patted him on the back and went into the room. Let them figure it out themselves. Commentary on Part 2. Chapter 2. The World of Summoning. Bacino. Part 2. Chapter 3. The Daimyo's Daughter. Show me your techniques. What if you don't deserve to guard me? In the 5 minutes I spent in the company of this lady, I felt an incredible desire to stab her. The Uchiha who went with me were in solidarity. And we have to accompany her for 3 days. We don't have to do this. Our job is to protect you, I say coldly. When I get back, I'll launch a fireball at Madara. How could you? The man didn't let her finish, he started whispering something in the daimyo's daughter's ear. After listening to him, she winced, but nodded. There was no need to eavesdrop, I already knew roughly what he told her. My name is Iori. I am Ranheim's assistant. I am glad you came, Iori bowed. When will you be ready to leave? We were assured that tomorrow, and were placed in a room. They wanted to give us several, but I insisted on a common one. We could discuss the plan and hold back the hotheads. There were 6 beds in the room, even one more than necessary. Having chosen a bed by the window, she began to sharpen kunai. Each of us did something of our own. Everyone waited to see who would start first. Izuna-sama, why do we need this mission? The kunoichi finally asked. Yuri-chan, this mission has already been accepted by Madara-sama, which means the order must be carried out. Moreover, the task pays well, and for its completion the daimyo will be more favorable to the clan. Why do we need the daimyo's favor? The clan is already strong. Jun jumped up on the bed, his name definitely doesn't suit him, he's not obedient at all. Jun-kun, this may come in handy in the future, and the alliance with Senju is not far off. In the future, the daimyo may hire us again, it will be to our advantage. My calm voice makes the hot-tempered Uchiha sit on his bed and thoughtfully stare at the ceiling. Izuna-sama, our mission is to bring Haim to the daimyo's residence. Does that mean we are not responsible for her life after that? Nobu asked, not taking his eyes off the fishing line he was winding in different ways. Everyone looked at me with interest. Quite an interesting question. In fact, yes. We will complete our task as soon as we take her to her destination. We will not be responsible for her life after that, unless daimyo wants to issue another task. But, as I said earlier, it is not to our advantage to have a bad relationship with the ruler of the fire country. Therefore, yes, we should protect her until we leave daimyo's castle. My thoughts were confirmed by everyone and they went to bed. An hour later, I realized that I wouldn't be able to fall asleep. I could lull myself to sleep, but I didn't see much need for it. I climbed out the window onto the roof and started watching the stars. It's rare these days that I get a chance to just sit. I either sort through the papers, of which there are more and more every day, or keep an eye on the senju, who often appear in our settlement, I mean the two brothers. My brother always leaves with Hashirama to either fight, or resolve alliance issues, or drink. They hide the last option from me, but I'm not blind, I can tell the difference between a sober and a slightly drunk Madara. When he drinks even a little, he starts confessing his love to me and whining about how bad Hashi is and how the clan has finished him off. It's fun until he starts coming up with solutions to the problems that have gotten to him. Once, when he got tired of his clanmates who knew too much, it was 2 months after Taijima's death, the clan was checking him then, he drank a little and at night, calling cats, he went to paint everyone, no, all the members of the clan's faces. In the morning it was very funny, even I did not escape the fate of being painted then. When the Uchiha began to figure out the culprit, Madara, standing on one of the houses, began to laugh. Everyone immediately understood who the culprit was, the elders even tried to put pressure on him that he was now the head, Madara proudly ignored them. After that, the Uchiha no longer checked their leader, Madara is inventive in revenge. Izuna-sama, why aren't you sleeping? I turned my head and looked at the Uchiha who had settled down next to me. I can't sleep, I shrug, starting to look at the sky again. The moon is not visible, which makes the stars look brighter. What are you thinking about? She glanced sideways at the girl. About my brother, Aika, about my brother. Isn't it about the day when Madara-sama painted everyone? Looking at the smiling face of Uchiha, she quietly laughed. How clever she is. How did you find out? I asked after laughing. It was written all over your face. When you relax, you lose control of your facial expressions, I tensed up at her phrase. Bad. Too relaxed. Lost control, you couldn't think of anything worse, Izuna-sama. She blinked and looked at the worried girl, who, as far as I know, never raises her voice. Stop closing yourself off. I don't think it's bad. You've been suppressing your emotions even from us, your clan, for too long now, you need to relax at least once. Why she started crying will probably remain a mystery to me. Having covered the distance between us in a few steps, she hugged Aika to herself and began to stroke her head. Calm down. Maybe you're right, but it's not time yet, I shake my head. Let's go to bed, I pulled the kunoichi after me. Having entered the room the same way, I took Aika to her bed and lay down myself. I fell asleep quickly. In the morning we had to wait a long time for Ranheim's retinue to gather. We set out a couple of hours later than we had planned. The horse-drawn carriage moved slowly, bouncing on fairly large hummocks. The daimyo's daughter would start squealing at each such hummock to make the animal go slower, but this did not help. Half a day into the journey, I had to stop June, who was eager to throw a kunai at Haim. As punishment for his hot temper, I sent him ahead of the procession to scout out the area. It was decided to go through the forest, as the likelihood of a successful attack would decrease. Halt, Yuri growled through clenched teeth, looking angrily at the servant who had announced this. The servant became frightened and disappeared on the other side of the cart. I wish someone would attack, June groaned quietly, standing not far from me. The Inuzuka pack is coming to meet you, don't talk nonsense, the best mission is a mission without problems, an Uchiha passing by muttered to Juno. Nobu, what's wrong with the dog clan? Aika leaned down from the tree, right in front of the aforementioned ninja. Take your seats, I snored irritably, turning away from them. Hi, Izuna-sama. The shinobi said in unison and happily, quickly retreating. The nursery is on the pasture, they just want to have fun. But isn't that good? Is that what Madara wanted? For the Uchiha clan to stop hating and move on? When I return, I will definitely ask. I want to fully understand my brother. Izuna-sama, June was very serious and collected, which made him wary. 7 people with poorly developed Kirakuki, chakra circulation system, were spotted ahead. Presumably bandits, the Uchiha straightened up, waiting for orders. Remove. Take Yuri and Nobu with you, they didn't argue with me and quickly left to do the job. They didn't have to wait long for them to return. The procession was just about to move out when the shinobi appeared at their positions. She cast a quick glance at Nobu, who nodded. I'll listen to the report later, since they didn't come up, it means they really are ordinary bandits. When it started to get dark, they stopped and the Haim started screaming again about it being a forest. Yuri started to grumble angrily that such Haim should be hanged at birth. It is unclear how the daimyo's daughter heard this, although there are suggestions that one of the servants heard it, which was most likely true. Having looked disapprovingly at the dejected Uchiha, she went to Ranheim. There were no problems. I'm waiting for an apology from the kunoichi who insulted me, which means she knows who said it. I'll apologize for her. The grinding of teeth was heard from behind. Unpleasant, right? But it's not worth ruining the relationship. I demand that the one who said this apologize. I look at her coldly. She thinks she can demand something. Chakra began to boil, trying to break out with negative emotions. I am the squad leader, so it is my fault. The steel in his voice slips out on its own, making those present shudder. I feel how my clansmen have tensed up, preparing to kill everyone here at any moment on my order. Fear slips into Ranheim's eyes, finally realizing who he is talking to. I apologize for my comrade, I say, bowing to the waist, coldly and slowly. Straightening up, I turn around and walk away. Passing by the frozen Yuri, I whisper angrily right into her ear. Out of turn duty, Uchiha winces and nods. She should have been punished better. But not now and not here. The night passed peacefully. I couldn't fall asleep, so I spent the whole time meditating, deploying my chakra and scanning the area. I was able to tell from my chakra that Yuri was nervous all the time and couldn't sleep either, but she didn't sit down to meditate, so she didn't look her best in the morning. The irritation and anger I felt towards her passed. She shuddered from my gaze and tried to quickly move away without looking up. I wanted to go up to her and shake her. Yes, she felt guilty, but that was no reason to avoid me. Damn, I couldn't even understand myself anymore. I need to get drunk, preferably in Madara's company. I made a note of this thought and went to the Uchiha. Having completely hidden my chakra, I walked quietly towards Yuri so that she wouldn't see me. How long are you going to be scared of me? Uchiha's reaction was unforgettable. She jumped up and threw a kunai at me with a turn. I easily intercepted them with a smile, looking at the dumbfounded kunoichi. Izuuna-sama, Yuri said, turning pale and taking a step back from me. When she was level with her, she put the kunoichi's kunai in her hand and patted her on the shoulder. I'm not angry, the rest of the way passed calmly, which is surprising. After this incident, the clansmen stopped paying attention to the quirks of the daimyo's daughter and kept their distance. Already on the approach to the main city, a hawk flew in with a message from Madara. The essence of the message was that the Senju were ready to conclude an alliance with us. The only thing missing was our detachment from the Uchiha side. Daimyo offered us a place to stay the night, but we refused, and an hour later we disappeared from the city. We were heading quickly towards our territory. Feeling chakra ahead, she stopped and gave a sign. Having scanned the area, she hissed in annoyance. I can't stand dog owners. 3 Inuzukas, with dogs. They smelled us. They'll disperse in a moment. There's no one behind me. Taking out the katana, I moved towards the enemies. A rustle, and 2 whirlwinds burst out of the bushes. Jump back. My hand was grazed. 2 drops of blood fell from my fingers. I approach the dog with a jerk. The beast bares its teeth and jumps in response. The blade of the katana meets its teeth. I smirk and feed wind and fire chakra into the weapon. The dog jerks, and the top of its head flies off its place. A growling guy jumps from the side. With my free hand I snatch a fan from my belt and with a stream of wind throw Inuzuka back. He crashes into a tree. Feeding fire chakra into the fan, I form a fireball the size of an apple. A swing, and the fire crashes into the guy's stomach. Having scanned the area, I sense chakra pockets only for my team. I sealed the bodies of the dog and his master in an empty scroll. I'll throw it away on the way. I moved towards my clanmates. Having met, we examined each other for serious wounds, which were not there, and moved towards the settlement. Having sealed all the bodies in my scroll, we drowned it in the nearest river. We don't need obvious traces. Commentary on Part 2. Chapter 3. The Daimyo's Daughter. Bacino. Part 2. Chapter 4. Aizen signing the contract. The exact date of signing the treaty is set in a week. Before that, I want to do something that might make my brother very angry with me, but I have already decided everything. Jumping from tree to tree, I approached the place where the signing of the treaty will take place, and then the celebration for this occasion. There are now several people from 2 clans there, who are decorating the furnishings there. Hashirama is also there, he is the one I need. Approaching the place, I saw someone I definitely did not want to see today, he could interfere. What is Tobarama doing here? I'd scared and jumped up to the surprised head of Senju. We need to talk, everyone looks at me in surprise. I stubbornly look at Kashi. If he doesn't agree, I'll act differently. Go ahead, Senju smiled and scratched the back of his head. But his eyes gave him away. Let's go. I reached the tree with a step, jumped on it and looked at Hashirama. His brother approached him. I chuckled and moved away so that I could not be seen. Soon Senju appeared. I nodded to him and began to lead him away from prying ears. Having gone a sufficiently far distance and not noticing the surveillance, I jumped down and, having waited for Hashirama to repeat, I quickly approached. I need help, Senju blinked in surprise. I'll be glad to help you, his happy smile is now starting to irritate me. You must transplant my eyes into Madara, I say directly, without trying to evade. I need his help. Hashirama seemed to have jammed. He stood motionless for a full minute, staring into space. Why, he frowns, really? He knows how to be serious. Sarcasm, of course, but the seriousness really got through to him. My brother has poor eyesight due to frequent use of Mangekyo and it gets worse with each time. Now I do all the paperwork, since my brother sees only in blurry spots. My eyesight is better, since he forbade me to use my Mangekyo. There is only one way to restore his sight, for me to give him his eyes. I agree. And I want you to perform the operation, only Senju wanted to say something, I gestured for him to listen to the end. Madara will not agree, but I will do it. Help me and I will be your debtor. Regarding the last one, I am not sure that he will need the help of a blind man. Stop, for greater persuasiveness he also made a sign with his hand. Firstly, Madara will kill me after this, secondly, are you sure there is no other way? I nod uncertainly. Okay, let's do it this way. Your eyesight has gotten worse too, I nod in confusion. He smiles. Let me check your eyesight now and decide if this can be solved without such a sacrifice. I am a good medic after all, I look at Hashirama with distrust. With an agreement, if you don't find another way, you do it my way. Then yes, I agree, I nod confidently and look expectantly at Senju. I don't think he will harm me. Very well then, let's begin. Sit down and close your eyes, I followed the instructions. When the hand, embraced by chakra, was about to touch my eyelids, I reflexively jumped back and turned on Mangekyo. Blinking in surprise, I looked at the equally surprised Hashirama. Taking a deep breath, I extinguished the Dujutsu. Sorry, reflex, the hand itself touched the eyelid of the left eye. Swallowing, I sat down and closed my eyes. Begin, it took me a lot of strength not to jump back or hit. Our clan takes care of the eyes, this is our main strength and feature. For us, losing eyes can be equated to death. I shuddered at my own thought. After all, I promised myself that I would not die, but my brother's eyesight. I'm done, the hand disappeared from my eyes, and I raised my eyelids with relief. Blinking, I looked at the concentrated Senju. Feeling my attention, he smiled warmly, this was probably the first time his smile didn't irritate me. So now listen. I need a couple of days to determine for sure whether this can be treated. In the best case, I would like to see Madara, Senju drawled thoughtfully. I can arrange it, just let me know in advance. Hashirama looked at me and smiled slyly, winking. Well, okay, let's go. On the way back he told various funny stories about himself and Tobarama. I didn't want to miss such incriminating evidence, so I remembered the information I needed with interest. The good imagination of the Genjutsu master gave the opportunity to see everything almost live, Hashirama told in sufficient detail. Madara looked at me in surprise when I brought sake and a choco. Without saying a word, I poured the alcoholic drink into cups and placed one next to Madara. What's the occasion? Nissan picked up his glasses from the floor. I wanted to, without saying another word, she emptied the sake cup in one gulp and poured another. Chuckling at my enthusiasm, Nissan handed me his Ichoko. So that Madara wouldn't notice the trick, I had to swirl the chakra around my body quite slowly. By the end of the second hour, I was already carried away. Well, can you imagine, Izuna? I tell him it's all nonsense, you're better, and he argues with me. How can some white moth be better than you? He's not drunk yet, but he's already complaining. Nissan, you'll always be here, right? The question came out on its own. It seemed the sake had a better effect on me than I thought. What kind of question is that? Never heard of it, never, my eye stung. He said it so confidently that it was simply impossible to believe. And why are you asking anyway? Madara looked at me in surprise. It's just that since we decided to make peace, you'll be able to communicate with Hashirama without any obstacles, and you're doing it now, forgetting about me. It will turn out like back then in childhood, you went and trained with him, although I often asked you to stay with me. I'm not a little child, but Madara-ni-san, please don't forget about me. In the end I couldn't hold back the tears, and they started running down my cheeks. I told him what I was so afraid of. Nissan even seemed to sober up. He grabbed me in his arms and started rocking me like a little child. Like he did in childhood after my first murder. Only then did he notice it and, taking me to his room, sat with me all night. And he had a mission to do then. I sniffled from the flood of memories and, burying my face in my brother's chest, burst into tears. Izuna, I will never leave you. You are my beloved Amuto, I will always be with you, as you will be with me. Izuna, you are my only family, I will not survive if you turn away from me. So stop worrying about trifles. My brother's warm hands warmed me, but the tears did not want to stop. I had accumulated too many worries about this. After sitting like this for a while, I got out of Madara's embrace and we repeated our drinking. When my brother had already fallen asleep, I sent chakra into the lighthouse, and Goro appeared in front of me. Goro, go to Hashirama. My tongue was slurred and wouldn't obey. The raven looked at me with surprise and flew to Senju. After a while, footsteps were heard. Shoji moved away with a dull sound. I sat leaning against the wall, since my head didn't want to stay up. Focusing my gaze, I recognized Hashirama. Waving my hand towards Madara, I closed my eyes, the world was spinning. Something cold touched my forehead. Opening my eye, I saw Senju. Frowning slightly, I tried to remove my hand. Wait, it will get better, and indeed, after a few minutes it did get better. There was no blur before my eyes, and the room stopped spinning. She nodded gratefully. Take care of Nissan, he might wake up, she whispered hoarsely. Frowning, she stood up, leaning against the wall, and went to the kitchen. She filled a glass with water and drank it down in one gulp. Having washed herself and feeling more cheerful, she headed back to the living room, where Madara and I were drinking. Hashirama was kneeling in front of Madara, moving his hand, covered in green chakra, over his brother's eyes. Sev leaned against the wall and began to watch Senju's manipulations. Half an hour later, he finished. It can be treated, Hashirama, pleased with himself, almost beamed. I look at him, surprised and expectant. He coughed and continued. I corrected Madara's vision, but it needs to be maintained, I will prescribe medication, she nodded understandingly. Now let me correct yours, she glanced sideways at him, but obediently closed her eyes. About 10 minutes later he walked away. I'll prescribe it for you too, but that's tomorrow. Let me help you carry it to the room, Hashirama pointed at Nissan. I shook my head. No need, we'll sleep here, Senju looked at me in surprise and blushed. Why all of a sudden? Well, okay, I guess I'll go. Hashirama crashed into the doorframe and, rubbing his forehead, walked away. What's wrong with him? I look at the bird in surprise. It shrugged its wings. It brought a blanket from the room and covered Madara. I climbed under his side and was immediately hugged. Having laid down, I immediately fell asleep. I woke up from someone groaning nearby. I opened my eyes and saw Madara clutching his head. I crawled out from under the blanket, ran to the kitchen and brought him some water with medicine. After drinking it, he thanked me and collapsed on the floor. Madara, what's wrong? My brother opened his eye. I told Hashirama about your loss of sight. He looked at my eyes and said that it can be cured. Today he should tell me what is needed for this. I looked at my feet my entire monologue. I was ashamed to look up at Madara. And? Shuddered at his voice and curled up into a ball. He came, right? I only nodded briefly at his question. My voice was gone. It was scary. Madara was angry with me. I will never drink with you again. I jerked my head up and looked at Nissan. He was watching me with devils in his eyes. They chuckled cheerfully and grabbed me in an armful. You're not angry. The voice itself sounded pitiful, and I looked at my brother with hope. I'm angry. I looked away again. But will that change anything? I just ask you, don't do anything behind my back anymore. In response I nodded happily and hung on Nissan's neck. Nissan, answer the question. Madara looked at me with interest through his lowered eyelashes and nodded. Why did Hashirama react strangely when I refused his help to move you to your room and said that we sleep together? I look at my brother expectantly. He thought for a moment and laughed. His laughter shook the whole house. I look at my brother clutching his stomach in surprise. What did I say? You see, Hashirama is an idiot, my brother began to explain to me, still laughing. He thought that we were sleeping together. I looked at him in confusion. Madara played with his eyebrows. Really? You guessed it. He seemed to understand from my stunned expression that I had guessed it. Come on, is he completely crazy? Jumping out of bed, I rushed to the window. I'll give it to you, pervert. They grabbed me across the body. Wait. Aren't you curious about what Hashirama will look like when he asks me about this? She glanced doubtfully at Nissan, but after thinking for a moment, she nodded. This is really interesting. The ceremony went by quickly and casually. Uchiha and Senju eyed each other suspiciously, but a couple of sips of sake were enough for them to start chatting cheerfully. The crows I summoned made sure no one was causing trouble. I was one of the few who didn't drink. Hashirama had built houses on the site of the celebration, so there was a place to spend the night. Passing by one of the tables, I noticed a group of teenagers arguing about something. I headed in their direction. There really were a lot of ninja here, and not just teenagers. I looked at the group in surprise. One of the senju shouted something like, "Prove it," and folded his arms across his chest. I knew exactly who he was copying. The Uchiha exchanged glances and rushed at me. It's a good thing I was dumbfounded by the shock, otherwise I would have stabbed those idiots just because of my reflexes. These blockheads rushed to hug me, confessing their love and eternal devotion to me. Eyebrows went up in unison. It seems you've had enough. Go to bed. They started convincing me that they were still going strong, and in general it was Senju's idea. They didn't seem to believe that my clansmen would be able to hug me. I advised them not to approach Madara with such an attitude, otherwise he would kill them. They assured me that they would be good boys and went to Senju again to argue about something else. For example, will Senju be able to hug Tobirama now? I made a note to find out if they succeeded. For this, I even persuaded the Raven to follow that group. They nodded to me and said that they would do it in the best possible way. Passing by the clan crests, I heard a noise, went to it and saw a wooden table and the clan heads drinking at it. How did they end up here? That is the question. Hashirama was energetically proving something to Nissan, and Madara was weakly refuting it. Everything was just fine until they noticed me. Madara jumped up and started squeezing me. It was pretty easy to get out and, whispering to Madara about the joke, I was able to distract him. While they forgot about me, I quickly slipped away. Having decided to move away and just sit, I saw a convenient tree and, having climbed onto a convenient branch, began to look at the sky. If something happens, the crows will call me. You didn't drink either? She lowered her head and saw Tobirama leaning against a tree. I've already had a drink with my brother. And you, I see, are a teetotaler. I cheerfully flashed my eyes in his direction. The albino just shrugged. Nah, maybe you don't know how to drink? I mockingly drawl, hanging from the branch. I'm bored, and with his help I can at least have some fun. Why do you think so? Oh well. You're more impenetrable today than usual. I frowned with annoyance and returned to a sitting position on the tree. You're incredibly happy today. Tobik returned the hairpin to me. I solved my problems. Isn't that a reason to be happy, Tobik? She waved her hands, showing her happiness. A cough was heard from Senju. Tobik? The albino asks puzzledly. Tobik-chan, I nod obediently and, jumping from the tree, dodge the stone that flew at me. But there is no anger in Tobirama's eyes. You accept the game, then. Laughing cheerfully, I ran into the forest. Catch me if you can, I scatter like crows, finding myself 10 meters away from Senju. He's a censor, so he'll find me. I hear Tobirama's cry after me, in which he claimed that he'd catch me. Well. A treaty between once warring clans is signed. A new era of hidden villages begins. End of the second part. Commentary on part 2. Chapter 4. Aizen signing the contract. Bichino. Part 3. Konoha. The village began to be built immediately after the end of the drinking party to celebrate the conclusion of the alliance. The Uchiha clan took wooden houses derisively, so we were in charge of building our quarter. The work was fast and fruitful. Architects from the common people were invited, since the shinobi did not have such skills. No, of course, we could have developed the plan of the houses ourselves, but it would have taken a lot of time and arguments. The plan of the settlement was drawn up by Hashirama and Madara, and Tobi and I helped. The architect was hired on the condition that he would be paid, but the memories of the village plan would be erased. He agreed, although with doubts, and when I assured him that I would be the one doing the erasing, he almost fainted. I had to promise that I would not touch anything unnecessary. I really don't care. It was decided to place the village head's residence in the middle, the armory was under the building. The hospital was placed a little to the side, next to the Senju quarter, since the doctors were from their clan. The Shinobi Academy was built not far from the Hokage building, it seems Hashi suggested it, and it stuck. But the Hokage himself has not yet been chosen. I was skeptical about my brother's desire to become one, but I didn't say anything, he already noticed it. I reminded him about the papers that he hates so much, and they brushed me off. I snorted arrogantly, taking offense at him. An hour later they found me and asked what I was proposing. Do you also want to protect the village and do something useful for it? Well, you don't necessarily have to become the head for that. Become someone whose decision will also carry a lot of weight, but from a different position. They took my words seriously and began to think about them. A week later, my brother was glowing like a polished blade. He promoted the idea of the Konoha police, which would include the Uchiha. The joyful Hashi began to help very actively, and so the police building appeared. Its full necessity was understood a little later. By unspoken decision, Hashirama became Hokage. The happy former head of Senju confidently declared that he would definitely give this post to Madara, but a little later. Everyone took this as support for the head of Uchiha, but damn, he was deadly serious at that moment. Recently I noticed that Tobirama began to disappear often. He could only be seen if he went to check on something or on errands for the new Hokage. Surprised by this fact and setting myself the goal of finding out where the white moth disappears, I went to Hashirama. This Senju could now always be found. He was sitting in the Hokage tower and sorting out papers. However, the likelihood that this Hashirama was real is extremely small. Tobik recently demonstrated a very interesting technique, which Senju Sr. later began to use. Madara and I copied this technique very quickly and harmoniously and now also used it. Tobirama looked at us with displeasure, and we only smirked maliciously. Something made me think hard. Landing on the frame of the open window, I looked inside and almost growled in frustration. Inuzuka, Xo, how I hate Inuzuka. 3 representatives of this clan were looking at me. From now on, I will always scan the space in the Hokage's office. Izuna-kun, did you want something? Hashirama asked peacefully. The dog handler's dogs growled, bending down to the ground. Shut up your dogs, otherwise I can't vouch for my kunai. I look at the growling creatures with disdain and arrogance. If it weren't for Hashi, we would have definitely started a massacre. Guys, let's not quarrel, the Hokage raised his hands peacefully. The dog owners only winced. Snorting contemptuously, she turned away. Where is Tobirama? She finally asked, jumping off the windowsill. Well, he's in his room, Seiju mumbled, puzzled. I raised an eyebrow in surprise, waiting for him to continue. Why do you need it? Hashirama asked in surprise, looking at me suspiciously. Snorting, I turned around and jumped out the window. It was stupid to hope that they would answer me, but at home is also an answer. Having found Madara with my sensorics, I went to him. Now I was in no hurry and walked along the street, although I usually move along the upper tracks. Madara was in the police building, giving instructions to the Uchiha working there. Hello, Nissan, do you need help? Noticing me, my brother let the people go. Only with papers, he smiled sweetly and made an apologetic look. Shrugging, she headed to the chief of police's office. There were also clan files on the table. She decided to start with the clan. After all, I was dealing with it now, my brother was burdened with other things. A few minutes later, Madara came up. Well, how is it? Snorting, she spread her arms, pointing to the table full of waste paper, and looked at him reproachfully. I saw Inuzuka today, I say casually. Nissan immediately tensed up, looking at me carefully. Did you kill them? A quiet question, a wary look. Looking at him, she shook her head sadly. Did it seem to me, or did I hear a sigh of relief? No, it didn't seem that way. Different clans began to join Konoha. The village began to grow. The most disgusting thing for me was the Inuzuka joining, at least they avoided me by a mile. I don't know exactly how I'll react to seeing dog lovers, but it definitely won't turn out well. Clans like Sarutobi and Shimura joined. The Yamanaka Nara Kimichi alliance also joined the village, a cheerful trio. When they fight together, they become serious opponents. Then the proud Hyuga came, looking down on my brother. I don't even know how he didn't kill them, although no, I know, he was held back by Hashirama's presence. However, our Hokage has so many advantages, even I don't bother to fight other clans in his presence. Now it's clear how he and Madara became friends. The Kurama clan's appearance was unusual, because they don't take us, the Uchiha, very well. We are still superior to them in Genjutsu. Then the Hatake came. I like them, because they don't like the Inuzuka very much either. The Aburame also joined Konoha, which is very surprising, they are a very secretive clan. Today Hashirama is a bit nervous. I had to go to him 3 times to hand over the documents to the police. Since the village has expanded, there have been some problems. Previously, most of the clans were at odds with each other, and now they live together. Everything is clear here. The Uchiha don't start a conflict just because they are afraid of Madara. But the Senju got into trouble a couple of times personally from Tobirama. So, about our Hokage's nervousness. Almost every 5 minutes he would exhale heavily and look out the window with hope. Already at the 5th such moment. My Uchiha patience snapped. Hashirama, how much longer? Are you sick by any chance? I look at him doubtfully. Idiots don't get sick, I think. Huh? No, everything's fine, really? You've been reading one sheet of paper for 15 minutes now, upside down. I look at him skeptically. The Hokage exhales sadly. I'm calling Nissan. I turn around to leave. Stop. I look at Senju, who has jumped up, in surprise. I turn on my heels and look at Hashirama. I really wanted to cross my arms over my chest, but no, that's Tobirama's favorite pose, I'm not going to repeat it. I'm waiting, I say coldly. I still have things to do, and now I have to deal with him. Hashirama sighs deeply. Okay, listen. 10 minutes later. Having settled down on the couch in the Hokage's office, I listen to him. The door opens with a quiet rustle, and the white-haired Senju appears on the threshold. Having stopped, he looked at me and Hashirama. And frowning, he glanced sideways at the time. Why are you standing there? I look at Tobik skeptically. Either come in or come out. I turn away from the blonde and look at Hashi. And then what? Hashirama looked at me and his brother in surprise. I look back boredly. Did you have a fight? Why should I quarrel with anyone? I look at all this with alienation. I've been stuck here longer than necessary. Since the conversation is over, I'm going. I'll pick up the documents when you come to your senses. Having said this, I jump out the window and run to the training ground. From the author. A black silhouette disappears in the window. Tobarama looks gloomily towards the window. He knows for sure that he is offended by him, but what is it about? Turning his gaze to his brother, who does not understand anything, he puts the papers on the table and is about to leave. Otuto, wait, the white-haired man freezes and, turning half sideways, looks questioningly at his brother. Why are you avoiding Izuna? A serious look, and the question itself makes Tobarama freeze. When did I ignore the annoying Uchiha? The thought beat in the white-haired skull. I didn't avoid him, Senju Jr. replies, frowning. And he thinks you're avoiding it, the Hokage says forcefully. He asked me where you were, but what would I tell him? That you're refining a new technique? But you asked me not to tell anyone, especially the Uchiha. Hashirama even stood up from his tirade, and in the end he plopped down in a chair. And what did you say? Tobarama said, looking gloomily at Aniki. What are you doing here? The Hokage shrugged. Well, he couldn't possibly be offended by this? Why do I even care about this Uchiha? Tobarama shook his head. And turning completely towards the door, he left. I don't care about this Uchiha. After these words the door closed. I don't believe you, Otuto. Hashirama shook his head tiredly and looked out the window. He has a stupid younger brother who thinks he knows everything. Commentary on Part 3. Konoha. Bachino. From the author, the fanfic is already finished, just waiting for editing. Part 3. Chapter 1. Daimyo and the Tessen fan. Since the village needs to live on something, we need assignments. Previously, missions were ordered from us by the daimyo or other people, but that was related to the clan. Now we need a contract to hire ninja from the village of Konoha. They put me on the team as the one who accompanied his daughter. Tobarama as the squad leader and the Hokage's representative. Nara Makoto as a tactician, and Sarutobi Yukio as a shock unit. The journey to the capital by the upper roads did not take long. Arriving at the daimyo's castle, we were told to wait in the hall, where we were escorted. Not even a couple of minutes had passed when the daimyo's daughter, flew into the room. What's interesting is that she almost immediately rushed at me. Stepping aside, I let her pass by the side. She lost her balance and fell. I look at her emotionlessly for a couple of seconds and, turning around, walk away. Izuna-san, I'm glad to see you. The ringing voice sounded too intrusive. Before she could say anything else, the door opened and the daimyo entered. Ranchan, what are you doing here? The man's voice was stern. The girl bowed and, having said some excuse, retreated. After discussing everything, the daimyo said that he needed to think and consult. He would tell us his answer tomorrow. We were placed in a room with 4 beds. This time Tobarama insisted on a common room. As usual, I sat down near the window and, taking out the kunai, began to sharpen them. Lately this has been my favorite sedentary activity. Nara was analyzing something and talking to Senju. Sarutobi was thoughtfully drilling me. What's up with you and that girl? I raise an eyebrow in surprise, looking at Sarutobi. Even Makoto stopped saying anything. Nothing, I answer laconically. This could help in the matter, Nara interjected. I despise her. Is that enough? Not paying any more attention to them, she continued her work. I could feel Senju's intense gaze on my skin. I could say something sarcastic, but I wasn't in the mood. After talking a little more, they went to bed. After waiting a little, she climbed out onto the roof and began to look at the stars. I remembered the same night, only in a different building. I recently saw Aika. She joined the Konoha police. Nobu was sent by Madara to the cats, to get weapons. Jun seems to be doing something in the clan. Yuri is training young Uchiha. And only my place will never change. Come out, I say quietly, turning my head towards Senju. A moment later, the albino was standing nearby. Why aren't you sleeping? The corners of his lips lifted slightly from this question. Only then it was said more respectfully and kindly. I turn my head away from him and shrug my shoulders. What's wrong with you, Uchiha? The question was too emotional. I blink in surprise and turn an indifferent gaze to him. Is there something wrong with me? What do you want from me? I close my eyes tiredly. This conversation is already annoying me, I should have ignored it. Why do all the strange conversations take place on the roof of someone else's building? Letting out a giggle, I began to look at the sky again. A heavy sigh and some scurrying was heard from the side. They sat down next to me. Another giggle escaped me. Do you happen to know Eiko? The question came out of nowhere. I can feel Senju's surprise. I don't know what you're upset about, but stop it, I glance at him. They don't look in my direction, I'm curious. Hashirama has eaten my brain, haha, our Hokage is all-powerful. It's not for nothing that they call him the god of shinobi, I whisper quietly. I hear a snort from the side. Did he swallow a hedgehog? Hedgehogs are not tasty, don't eat them, I speak louder and leave the roof. Having climbed into the room, I lay down on the bed. Soon Tobirama appeared in the window opening. Strange Uchiha, he quietly said, then went down to the floor and lay down too. You're stupid, Senju, because no one in this room sleeps, although you know that too. I'll kill Senju. I'll definitely kill him someday, quietly. Nara's scrutinizing gaze was unnerving, although I remained calm on the outside. The second meeting with the daimyo was scheduled for the afternoon. Out of boredom, I took out my battle fan and began sharpening the ends of the spokes. I hadn't used it for a long time. The tesson fit comfortably in my hand, and with a few movements of my wrist, I opened the fan. It opened with a quiet metallic clang. It was custom-made and given to me by Nissan. The top half of the tesson was black and the bottom white. Dragons were painted on the edges of the black part, and a yin-yang sign in the middle. The spokes for it were made of chakra-conducting metal. Madara knows a lot about fans, his favorite weapon is the gunbai. All Uchiha can control one of 3 fans. Do you know how to use it? The lying Nara asked, looking at me lazily with one eye. An evil grin appeared on its own. Do you want to check? I look mockingly at Makoto. He exhales heavily and lazily drawls. No, he yawned and closed his eyes. Snorted and began to twirl the fan in her hand. The metallic clanging when it folded and unfolded touched old memories. When I was taught to use it and taught not only to supply chakra and create fireballs with wind, but also combat positions in close combat. Although my type of fan is more suitable for support, but Madara's is for reflection and attack. If you hit him on the head with such a contraption, while also charging it with chakra, you'll jump all the way, even a very well-trained ninja won't be able to get up. Although, if you feed your body with chakra, then there is a chance, but it's still better not to get caught under it. What will happen? I know, Nissan once had such a hobby. Stop it. You'll burn the room down, I look at Senju, uncomprehendingly. My fingers, which were lying on the metal spokes, were pleasantly warm. Unconsciously, I gave chakra, and on the unfolded tesson lay 2 fireballs the size of a nut. With a chuckle, I began to roll them from one edge to the other, tossing them slightly. The fiery lumps glowed with a red golden light and very pliably spun above the fan. With one movement, I gathered the fan, caught the fireballs with the gobra, the outer thickened plates. I slightly shook my hand, and the balls merged into one, which became slightly larger. I bent the fan and caught a fireball with the sharp spikes. I opened the fan, now there was a flame on each bayonet of the tesson. I folded the fan and put out the lights. Looking up, I came across one admiring and 2 surprised looks. This even made me blush a little, I completely forgot about them. Great, Sarutobi breathed out. I raised an eyebrow in surprise. I didn't think that weapons could be used like that, Nara said thoughtfully. What don't I understand? I warmed up with the tesson and forgot about them, what's wrong with that? I'll have to do it again, it's very relaxing. Shrugging her shoulders, she put the fan back on her belt. Soon we were called to the daimyo. The contract for orders was signed, and the village hidden in the leaves was also recognized as official and fully owned by the shinobi, meaning that everything that happens in the village does not concern the daimyo, and he cannot influence Konoha in any way. On the one hand, this contract is beneficial to the daimyo, no matter what we do, they cannot blame him for it. On the other hand, Konoha will be able to conduct its policy without relying too much on the situation in the country, but is obliged to protect its borders. This also has its advantages. We have the right to interfere in wars for territory and put our points on the borders. The daimyo has a guarantee that in the event of an attack, we will fight. Everyone is happy. On the way back, it rained. It was strong enough that in an hour the wood was completely soaked and slippery. Wet clothes stuck to the body, you could use chakra to dry it, but this is just an unnecessary waste of chakra. With such rain you will have to spend a lot of it. It was decided to wait out the weather phenomenon in one of the caves. We found what we needed in about 5 minutes, and that was thanks to Tobarama. There is nothing to say here, the element of earth may not be his main one, but his sensory ability is located right there. Senju can feel vibrations of the earth, how he found the cave in this way is a mystery to me. 3 times Axo. At first everything was fine. We found a cave, lit a fire. But these men suddenly wanted to hang their clothes out to dry. Oh well, as if I had never seen nearly naked males, so why were they so picky about me? Sarutobi almost started taking my clothes off himself, so I had to promise him the most unforgettable genjutsu, after which he would become a vegetable. They understood me and left me alone for a while. I even dried my clothes a little with chakra, I really didn't want to get sick. Come on, Uchiha, we're all guys here. I wanted to snort arrogantly at this statement, but I held back. The Nara were smart after all, and I didn't want to reveal my true gender. After all, my unwillingness to undress already looked strange. Using genjutsu wasn't an option, Senju might understand this, and then unnecessary questions would arise. A hopeless situation. I look at you and I feel cold myself, Yukio continued in the meantime. She looked at him skeptically, snorted and showed him dry clothes. Completely ignoring Nara's scrutinizing gaze and Tobarama's gloomy one, she leaned against the wall and began to meditate. A couple of hours later the rain stopped, and we continued on our way. Tobarama, as the squad captain, went to hand over the mission. I headed towards my brother. He was at home in the kitchen, which was surprising. He was cooking something. Hiding my chakra, I began to silently approach Nissan. I came up to Madara's side to see what he was doing. It was dangerous to approach him from behind, and it made him nervous. Judging by the ingredients, he was making his favorite type of sushi, but... If you don't take it out now, it'll burn, I whisper confidentially. Nissan shrugged and grabbed a bag of tofu from the frying pan with his chopsticks. I thought you'd come back later, turning off the fire.